It's Matt Gaetz versus Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The government needs a budget resolution by September 30th, or it all shuts down. Gaetz and McCarthy are at loggerheads. Some say the Republicans are fighting a civil war. It's a bloody civil war, just like the one back in 1861. The only difference is with this civil war, both sides are on the side of slavery. Here is Republican Congressman Mike Lawler of New York. He's not a member of the Freedom Caucus. He's complaining about them.
You keep running lunatics, you're going to be in this position.
That's New York Congressman Mike Lawler calling people like Matt Gaetz a lunatic. Go on, Congressman Lawler.
This is not conservative republicanism. This is stupidity.
Where have you been? Conservative republicanism and stupidity have become synonymous. What you've been sleeping for 50 years? Please continue, New York Republican Congressman Lawler.
The idea that we're going to shut the government down when we don't control the Senate, we don't control the White House. These people can't define a win. They don't know how to take yes for an answer. It's a clown show.
It's a clown show. Well, yes and no. See, the Freedom Caucus are a bunch of deranged half-wits. They're psychotic. They're dangerous. They're fascists. They are filled with nothing but contempt for Washington and democracy. But at least they're honest. Whereas the rest of the Republican Party, they believe everything the Freedom Caucus believes, but they don't really want to deliver that because that's a suicide pact. That is what the Republican Party is. They have a platform that they can't really implement because it would destroy America. So they like to pretend they want to. Remember what they do? They voted on repealing Obamacare 100 times when Trump was president. And whenever you asked, okay, you're going to get rid of Obamacare, what are you going to replace it with? And they'd say something better. And they go, okay, and what is it? It's going to be better. Trust us, it's going to be better. What they run on, they really don't want to deliver because it's not only going to destroy the country, it's also going to destroy their party. Like they overturned Roe v. Wade, and now they're in trouble. They never really wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade. They just wanted to use it as a fundraising cudgel and a promise that they weren't going to keep. But the Federalist Society came along, and they got us 3 judges who take this shit very seriously. They put 3 judges on the Supreme Court in the Trump administration, and Trump said, really? They're really going to get rid of Roe v. Wade? So at least the Freedom Caucus is honest. The same way, in many ways, Trump is kind of, sort of honest, right? You know, he just ripped the Band-Aid off and showed us who the Republican Party really is. So I don't like Matt Gaetz. But when people say the Freedom Caucus, they don't know what they want, that's disingenuous. The Freedom Caucus has been very clear about what they want. They want to destroy. They want to destroy this country. They want but I'm being serious here. It's McCarthy. McCarthy just wants power. He doesn't care about America. He doesn't care enough about America to want to destroy it the way the Freedom Caucus does. So what does the Freedom Caucus want? They want a government shutdown because they want to shut government down permanently, which is pretty much the Republican platform. That's what Trump is promising. His second term is he's going to reverse the administrative state and bring it back to pre-Roosevelt. That's the plan. Vivek Ramaswamy said, if elected president, because he's running to be Trump's vice president, he said, I will fire 75% of the federal workforce. He said, in my first term, 50% of all federal workers will be fired. Something like 3 million Americans work for the federal government through the executive branch. That's their job plan, is to fire the federal workers. But they're not going to do that. They wouldn't do that. They want to trim the federal government slowly and turn those jobs over to private contractors, their friends, who charge 100 times more to do the same job with worse results. That's how it works. Halliburton. Remember Halliburton or McKinsey or Booz Allen? They take over government jobs and charge 100 times more to do it, and they do the job a lot worse. So I disagree with the Freedom Caucus, but they know what they want. They want a government shutdown, and anytime you can shut the government down, it's good. If they can shut the government down for a week or two, that satisfies their donors. Here is Florida Congressman, Republican Matt Gaetz, who not only wants to shut down the government, he wants to shut down Kevin McCarthy.
We will likely have to endure some degree of a shutdown.
There he goes. He's saying there's going to be a shutdown. So he wants to get rid of McCarthy. He wants to shut the government down for as long as possible. Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus, they want to stop funding the war in Ukraine because Putin is the white Christian savior. They want to protect Donald Trump from Jack Smith. So they want to defund special counsel Jack Smith's office so his investigation's shut down. Now, you can't do that. It's unconstitutional. It can't be done. But that's what they claim they want in the budget, to defund the Justice Department. And he wants the budget, and this is kind of interesting. He wants the budget to be passed the way Kevin McCarthy promised it would be passed in order to get some of the Freedom Caucus to vote for him. To get the votes back in January to become Speaker, Kevin McCarthy promised that when it came time to putting together a budget, they would vote on each federal agency separately. There would be separate appropriations bills for each federal agency. According to McCarthy, according to the deal he made with members of the Freedom Caucus for their votes, he promised separate appropriations bills for, say, and I'm kind of exaggerating here, but this is the gist of it, a separate appropriations bill for the Department of Labor, and then a separate appropriations bill for the Environmental Protection Agency, and so forth. This appeals to the fiscal hawks in the Republican Party who want to be able to look at each individual agency and then vote on the budget for each individual agency instead of it being wrapped into an appropriate. I think there are like 12 appropriations bills, and they put like labor and EPA and the Department of Education into one, and there's a separate one for the defense. But the Freedom Caucus wants to sever the budget, and each agency has to defend its spending. They're called single subject spending bills. That's what the Republicans are calling it, single subject spending bills. Are we going to vote on the NIH? Okay, we're going to vote on their budget, not the NIH and the DEA and the Department of Labor all lumped together. I mean, if it weren't coming from the Freedom Caucus, it almost sounds reasonable. It does. It'd be nice to have a conversation about how we fund all these departments and try to get more money for them. It's a reasonable idea. Unfortunately, it's coming from sociopaths like Matt Gaetz, who dodged a bullet, and somehow the Justice Department didn't prosecute him for trafficking underage girls, bringing them to Washington, D.C. for sex and drugs, like his friend, who is now doing time. His friend is going, why aren't Why aren't you prosecuting Matt Gaetz? Oh, yeah, he's a congressman. Well, anyway, here is more of Matt Gaetz explaining why there's going to be a government shutdown.
The deal we made in January compels single subject spending bills where each agency comes forward and defends their budget. And those would be bills that would be open to amendment. That's what the American people want to see. And that's the only way we're actually going to get to the type of substantive review that yields actual results. 8% cut, 1% cut, 2% cut. This is not the work of a serious legislative body.
Okay, so he talked about the single subject spending bills, which I'm trying to understand why the government's about to shut down. So single subject spending bills, not unreasonable, right? Not unreasonable. Matt Gaetz then took to the floor of the House to announce that he will not support the CR, the continuing resolution, or the Donald, sometimes he'll refer to it as the Donalds CR. That would be Byron Donalds, the congressman who introduced the continuing resolution. So they've been calling it the Donalds CR. Like anyone is supposed to understand that. But that's what the Donalds CR means. It's the bill that McCarthy wants passed to give the government 30 days of money. It's a continuing resolution, but they're calling it the Donalds CR because Byron Donalds from the Freedom Caucus introduced it. Take it away, Matt Gaetz.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not voting for a continuing resolution. I'm not voting to continue the failure and the waste and the corruption and the election interference, and in some cases, the efforts that could lead this country into World War III. Okay,
we keep hearing about World War III. Donald Trump said it was going to be World War II, which sounds a lot worse. World War III sounds more anodyne than another. When Trump said Biden's going to lead us into World War II, I thought, not that again. World War III can't be as bad as World War II. What they mean by World War III is funding Ukraine. They don't want to fund Ukraine, and so it's going to lead to World War III. He continues to attack Donald CR, not Donald Trump CR. This is Byron Donalds' continuing resolution. He introduced the continuing resolution that McCarthy wants passed. Here we go.
The Donald CR is a permission slip for Jack Smith to continue his election interference as they are trying to gag the president, the former president of the United States, and the leading contender for the Republican nomination.
Okay. Talked about defunding Jack Smith, the special counsel. So he's carrying Donald Trump's water. Well, and he doesn't want to fund Ukraine. So for anybody to accuse Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus of not knowing what they want, they've made it pretty clear. They're more honest than McCarthy. McCarthy just wants power. That's all he wants. Congressman Jim McGovern is a Democrat. Oh, we have more from Matt Gaetz. Hang on.
I oppose the CR authored by my friend and colleague from Florida, Byron Donalds. The Donalds CR continues the Ukraine policy negotiated by Speaker Pelosi and Mitch McConnell in the omnibus that conservatives were against.
Okay. Congressman Jim McGovern is a Democrat from Massachusetts. I like him. And he is a ranking member of the Rules Committee. He is the ranking member of the Rules Committee. Ranking member means that if the Democrats win back the House, he will most likely be the chairman. When you hear the term ranking member, it means he's not the chair because Republicans control the House, so all committees are chaired by Republicans, but he is the ranking member. So he speaks for the Democrats on the committee. He's like the minority leader of the committee. That's what ranking member means. They always assume we know this shit, right? And it just pushes people away. He and Matt Gaetz are complete and polar opposites, and yet here is Congressman Jim McGovern voicing support for an amendment introduced by Matt Gaetz to the defense spending bill.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of a bipartisan amendment that is made in order and will be offered by Representative Gates and Jacobs to prohibit the transfer of cluster munitions. Since 2009, the United States has refused to use, produce, transfer, or sell cluster munitions. And as a nation, we could take pride in this decision. Cluster munitions are indiscriminate weapons. They explode when touched by a soldier, a farmer, or a child. They contaminate an entire field of combat, and they remain a deadly threat long past the end of a conflict. Rain and other events can move them from where they first landed to who knows where. And yet, the Biden administration recently chose to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. I condemn Russia's use of cluster munitions against Ukraine, but two evils do not add up to a greater good. The United States should not have provided cluster munitions to Ukraine, and this amendment is necessary to ensure such a transfer does not happen again.
Okay.